Here's something most people don't know. The war that helped break the Soviet Union wasn't supposed to last more than a few months. A quick mission, a simple fix. That's what Moscow thought. Instead, it turned into a decade of fear, blood, double-crossing, and decisions that still shape the world today. And the real truth behind it? Nobody wanted to admit it then. And some still don't now. Everyone's heard the same short version. Soviets roll in, Mujahideen fight back, CIA hands out weapons, and boom, Cold War battlefield. But that version is like looking at a mountain through a tiny window. Once you open that window wider, the picture gets darker, more confusing, and honestly, a lot more human. Because behind every headline were leaders arguing, soldiers begging to go home, and Afghan families shattered by a war they didn't start. And the craziest part? Almost every side thought they were doing the right thing. On paper, the Soviet Union should have crushed this war in months. They had tanks, helicopters, jets, thousands of soldiers, a global superpower. But Afghanistan wasn't fighting on paper. It was fighting with mountains, culture, tribal loyalty, old wounds, and a type of patience no foreign army has ever been able to match. So we're left with one simple challenge. Why did the USSR, the same country that beat Nazi Germany, get stuck in a war against fighters who rode horses, carried AK-47s, and lived in caves? To understand that, we need to walk through the story from the ground, not from a textbook. Long before the Soviets arrived, Afghanistan was already collapsing from the inside. The communist government that took over in 1978 made huge changes overnight. Land reforms, women in schools, new taxes, forced political loyalty. Some Afghans liked it, many hated it. And when leaders started killing their own rivals inside the party, trust vanished. Small villages rebelled, then districts rebelled, then entire provinces rose up in anger. In 1 year alone, the Afghan army lost more than half its soldiers, not in battle, but through desertion. That terrified Moscow. The Afghan president called the Kremlin almost daily. If you don't help us, we're finished. But here's what people often forget. Some Afghan leaders begged the Soviets not to come. They knew foreign boots on Afghan soil would unite even their enemies against them. Moscow listened, debated, panicked, then made the worst choice possible. They stepped in anyway. The Kremlin believed the operation would be clean and quick. Replace the unstable Afghan president, secure Kabul, support the army, and leave. Simple. They sent in elite units first, paratroopers, Spetsnaz, special operators. The old president was killed. A new leader was installed. Soviet flags appeared on bases around Kabul. On the first night, Soviet officers actually wrote messages home saying the mission was going smoothly. They had no idea what was coming next. Outside Kabul, in the mountains and deserts, rebels were already regrouping, in places the Soviets didn't even know existed. People talk about bravery and tactics, but the biggest enemy wasn't a man. It was the land itself. Afghanistan is a maze of steep ridges and hidden valleys. The air is thin. The winters are brutal. Roads twist like snakes. A convoy could travel for hours and only move a few kilometers. And behind every bend was the same question. Is this the place we get ambushed? The Mujahideen didn't fight like a normal army. They faded into the mountains. They attacked at night. They mined every road. They hid in caves that even drones today struggle to detect. A Soviet tank commander once said, "We control the valley floor, they control everything else." That one sentence explains almost the entire war. Another myth, that the Mujahideen were one big heroic force. Not even close. They were tribes, clans, warlords, students, nomads, shopkeepers, and former soldiers, all with different goals. Some were religious leaders. Some were criminals. Some were patriots. Some wanted revenge. Some were funded by Pakistan. Others were funded by Saudi Arabia. Some refused help from anyone foreign. But when the Soviets arrived, every one of them had the same reaction. No foreign army will tell us how to live. And that thought, simple as it sounds, is what kept them fighting. Many fighters didn't even plan to keep fighting long term, until Soviet raids hit their villages. Then suddenly, rebel groups grew overnight. This part rarely gets talked about, but it's important. Most Soviet soldiers were kids, 18, 19, 20 years old. Some had never left their hometowns. Many didn't know the local language. Some didn't know why Afghanistan mattered at all. They were told they were helping a friendly country. That's it. Then they stepped off the transport plane, and everything hit them: the heat, the dust, the mountains, the silence after each explosion, the fear of roads that could blow up any second. They were fighting people they didn't hate, in villages that didn't ask for them, for a goal no one could clearly explain. And they carried that confusion every day. At first, the CIA thought the Soviets would be in and out. A quick embarrassment for Moscow. Nothing more. But the longer the war dragged on, the more Washington realized they had a chance to hurt their biggest rival without risking American lives. Money started flowing. Weapons started flowing. Fighters got training across the border in Pakistan. Some leaders became millionaires from foreign support alone. Then came the moment that changed everything: Stinger missiles. Simple enough for one fighter to carry, deadly enough to take down Soviet helicopters. In the year after the Stingers arrived, Soviet helicopter losses doubled. The sky, which used to be Moscow's biggest advantage, suddenly became a danger zone. Here's the part no one likes to talk about because it's uncomfortable. Most suffering fell on normal Afghan families. Some villages supported rebels. Some supported the government. Most didn't support anyone. They just wanted to survive. But both sides pressured them. Both sides punished them. Both sides accused them of helping the other. Homes burned. Fields were bombed. Families ran into the mountains with whatever they could carry. By the mid-1980s, more than 5 million Afghans had fled the country. The refugee camps in Pakistan became entire cities. A war that started as protecting a friendly government had now created one of the biggest refugee crises of the century. Back in Moscow, leaders were arguing constantly. Some said staying in Afghanistan showed strength. Others said leaving showed wisdom. Some feared the world would see retreat as weakness. Others feared the USSR was bleeding money and men it couldn't spare. The Soviet Union was already struggling economically. Factories were failing. Food shortages were growing. And then the war piled on more pressure, more spending, more secrecy, more anger from families who lost sons. Politicians who supported the war early on were now privately calling it a disaster. And the Soviet public knew they were being lied to. Coffins came home at night. Numbers were hidden. Cemeteries grew quietly. Something had to break. In 1986, Mikhail Gorbachev took control of the USSR and said the words Soviet generals had been afraid to hear: Afghanistan is a bleeding wound. He ordered withdrawal plans, not because the Soviets couldn't fight, but because they finally admitted the war had no finish line. Every valley they secured slipped out of control months later. Every Allied Afghan unit they trained broke apart soon after they left. So the Soviets backed out slowly, town by town, base by base, convoy by convoy. The Mujahideen watched them leave with mixed emotions. They won, but they also knew something dangerous was coming. A power vacuum. When the last Soviet convoy crossed the Friendship Bridge in 1989, soldiers cheered. They hugged. Some cried. They believed this nightmare was finally over. But here's the twist that makes the story so tragic. The real war inside Afghanistan was just beginning. The government left behind fell apart in a few years. Mujahideen groups turned on each other. Kabul became a battlefield again. New factions rose. Old friends became enemies. And from that chaos, the Taliban gained ground. The Soviet-Afghan War didn't end in 1989. it transformed into something even more violent. So what really happened in the Soviet-Afghan War? A superpower walked into a conflict it didn't understand. Local politics exploded the moment foreign troops landed. Foreign nations used Afghanistan as a chessboard. Young soldiers on both sides paid the price. Villages were destroyed. Families were scattered. And the fallout changed world history, from the fall of the Soviet Union to the rise of new militant groups. This wasn't a clean war. It wasn't a simple war. It wasn't a war of good guys and bad guys. It was a war of fear, pride, misunderstanding, and endless consequences. And the shadow of it still hangs over the world today. Please like and subscribe to our channel to see more untold chapters of history.